Thanks for joining us, and welcome back to the Watchman on the Wall podcast. Periodically, we'll bring you true stories of angelic encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. When we come back, we'll begin our next episode. Hello again, and welcome back. I recently heard a broadcast from Prophet Chris Yoon on what God has shown him about the next few months. He goes on to say it's going to be crazy. And he runs some parallels, which I thought was fascinating, with some parallels in the Bible that God has showed him about King David and King Solomon. I think you're going to find this comparison very compelling. So here now is Prophet Chris Yoon.
All right, hey, what's going on, guys? So I have a very important video today. I'm going to discuss a couple of things that I had mentioned a few days ago, and as well just the theme of this past year in terms of understanding the times, understanding the political climate, understanding how to discern and to get yourself right before the Lord. Otherwise, you will be eaten alive if you don't know how to pray, how to discern through all of this, especially what's going on with COVID and also with the political climate and the recent election and the follow-ups that are happening right now. And if you are tracking it, you would know that a lot of the audits, a lot of the different reports, the Durham report and many other things, they will be coming out very soon. And some of those things are going to be very shocking for people. And I'm going to tell you right now that I believe, and the Lord has shown me, that those things are going to show the fraud. It's going to show what truly was the vote count for Trump and President Trump. And so before those things come out, a lot of people are fighting against it. A lot of people, especially Satan, because he knows what's coming for him. He knows what's coming for this current administration and all of the justice that's going to happen. And so these are things that I don't say lightly just because I'm taking a guess. These are things that I'm telling you that the Lord showed me. The timeline could have been different, and it was different. It was something that I was not aware of, but the outcome is still the same. And I want to share with you guys a couple of verses, or rather a story, and then I want to tell you specifically what you need to prepare for and what is about to go down. Because if you aren't ready, then you are not going to be in a state of mind for which you can receive it with an open mind and open heart. But instead, you're going to be moving along in the Antichrist spirit. You're going to be moving along with a group that is giving you false information. And that's why I've been talking about how we are in a very big information warfare. How does this relate with this channel, with God and your relationship with Christ? Well, if you don't understand what's going on in the times, then you are going to make decisions that are not aligned to God's will. You're going to make decisions that are against what Christians are doing and what they're standing up for, because you heard from the wrong people. You heard from somebody that you believe was credible, but it wasn't. And so that's why God has to bring prophetic voices. God has to raise up certain people that have truths so that they can declare it to you. But it's up to you to pray about it, to receive it, and to go and do research yourself, and to really have an open mind to what's coming. If you don't see something happening in the immediate, if you think somebody said something and it didn't happen by a certain date, you're just flipping tables and you're getting angry. But instead of doing that, you have to see it from the bigger perspective, the bigger picture. So that's what I want to briefly explain today. Otherwise, it would just be something that the Lord convicted me to do, and I didn't have the obligation to share it. And so that's why there's so many people fighting, and they're being slandered, they're being thrown down, they're being called conspiracy theorists, they're being called, QAnon people and all these things. And I'm not grouping myself or other people into certain groups. I'm not grouping myself into a bucket and saying I'm this person. I am just simply after the truth. I am simply after what Christ and what God is doing in terms of this season and in this period of time, okay? And so I want to briefly share this passage very quickly. I'm just going to, I'm not going to read the passage, but I'm just going to describe it, okay? And I want to talk about how that relates to this current time, because immediately as I was asking and praying about the situation, God gave me 1 Kings chapter 1. And this is the story about Adonijah, okay? Adonijah, he wanted to make himself king. And so basically he got all these people. He got, let me see here. He got Joab, the son of Zeruiah, with Abiathar, the priest. He had a bunch of chariots, horsemen, a big army. He got all of the mighty men. And he had all these people that he had basically a banquet and a dinner for. He invited them and he proclaimed himself to be king, right? And he allowed all these people to believe and to side with him so that he can be the next king. But of course, he wasn't the king. And instead, the king that came after King David was King Solomon. And so this story is talking about how there are two sides. And King David, who was old at the time, he was sided with Nathan the prophet, Benaniah, the mighty men, and then Solomon, his brother. I'm sorry, mighty men wasn't with the other group. And so he had these small groups of people, Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon as well. And they're basically going to David and saying, hey, didn't you say that, didn't you declare that Solomon would be king after me? And isn't that something that the Lord wanted as his will? And of course, with all this going on in the background, there was a temporary period of time for which there were factions. There were people that were with the group of Adonijah, and there were people that were with King David and Solomon, right? And I want to read this one particular verse, which struck me, and it's verse 20. It says, and as for you, my Lord, O King, the eyes of all Israel are on you, that you should tell them who will sit on the throne of my Lord the king after him. Otherwise it will happen when my Lord the king rests with his fathers, that I and my son Solomon will be counted as offenders. Okay, so there's a lot going on in this passage. I would encourage you to read it, but this is what I'm going to very quickly skim and how it relates to this time period, okay? And so a lot of people have talked about this before. They're like, they're disregarding and saying, oh no, politics and this stuff, it doesn't matter. Don't get into it, all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is God raises kings and he tears them down. And there are certain people that God anoints that he uses for a specific time to do his will and to do whatever it is that God wants for his people. And most of the time it's to give glory to himself. Well, it is always to give glory to himself, but also to turn a nation from wickedness and back to him. Okay. And so he'll use random people. He'll use misfits. He'll use people that just don't make sense. He'll use people like Solomon. And Solomon was one of the greatest kings in the Bible. And before he reigned and before he did all the things like build a temple and he was there was a lot of prosperity. Before that happened, Satan wanted to take that away from him by bringing and allowing Adonijah and this story to kind of come to pass. And it deceived a lot of people. It deceived people that were on the other side. And even Joab, if you read who Joab is, he was the commander of David's army. He did a lot of great things, right? And he had his moments and all that stuff, but everybody has their moments. But Joab, in particular, he was tricked basically, or he was deceived, or whatever you want to call it. He sided with the wrong side. And that's because a lot of it was because he didn't fully know, or maybe it didn't click to him what God's will was. And so however you want to interpret this, but you had good people, you had innocent people on the other side. And on the right side, the side that was supposed to happen, which is that Solomon would be king, other people were on that side. And specifically, there were prophets and people that declared what was to happen, right? And so the same thing is going on now. A lot of people, they don't understand that because their level of understanding God's will, their level of understanding the times, and their level of Christianity is so limited just to the church. It's limited to Jesus, 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 being in the closet and just shouting his name and not having any perception of how God is raising up workers, and he's tearing down modern day Asherah poles, modern day statues of Baal. He doesn't, people that are proclaimed to be Christian, they don't see those things. So they don't understand how political and how other things are working behind the scenes. So it's not about, a Republican versus Democrat. It's not about this country versus that country. A lot of it is good versus evil. A lot of it is using certain nations or people groups or a person to do the will of God. And so that's what I'm so strongly declaring and advocating, and I've done so from the beginning. Other things, I always say, okay, there might be a gray area. There are things that I'm just like, I'm not sure what this is, and I'm not going to dare proclaim it. Otherwise, it would be heresy, right? But for these things, you have to understand that you have to hear from the Lord if you're able to discern it yourself, but also from other people that are telling you what the truth is. And because we're in a state right now with the information warfare, people that are actually telling the truth, they're being written off as at worst terrorists, right? And DHS, if you saw that, came out with warnings, and they said people that go against the COVID mandates, people that go against Trump being reinstated. Yeah, these things are actual news articles and news things. Trump being reinstated, the possibility of that happening, and all these different things, right? Why are people still in the mainstream media still talking about fighting for this possibility of Trump being reinstated and all this stuff, right? The audits and all that.
We'll be right back after this. Hello again, this is The Watchman. Please join us each week for an exciting and inspirational podcast dealing with angel encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. So tune in each week and share it with your friends. After all, they could use a little inspiration in their life, too. That's the Watchman on the Wall podcast, and now you can find us on YouTube. We return you now to Prophet Chris Youn.
So if it came and went in January and there was nothing of it, and there's still fierce fighting, there's still fierce opposition to the election results and all this stuff, then why are people still talking about it and fighting for it? It's because there's a big battle going on of good versus evil, of truth versus having a false sense of what the outcome is. And that's what happened with Adonijah and Solomon. And that's what happened with what the declaration was. And just like how this verse was saying, all eyes are on you. And that verse stuck out to me because right now you have to have your eyes on the source of truth. And the ultimate source of truth is God. And if you don't have your source of truth on him, and praying and discerning and trying to sift through what is truth, what is the right articles, what is the right evidence and all that stuff, then you're going to be eaten alive. And so that's why right now it's important. It's so important to get your relationship with Christ right. It's so important to make sure that you are reconciled and in tune with God so that you can have the Holy Spirit in you to discern these things. Otherwise, like I've said before, you're just going to read an article. You're going to read some note from DHS and you're just going to flow with it. And you're just going to flip tables. You're going to get angry. You're going to get emotional. And you're going to say, oh, these darn terrorists, why would they rile themselves up and do these things? And oh man, these extreme QAnon people and these weird people, come on, what are they doing? And you're going to mock and you're going to go along with what these guys are saying. Fortunately, a lot of people are awake right now. A lot more people are doing research. They're awake. And if you look at activity on things outside of the mainstream media, Rumble, BitChute, Telegram, and all these other places, even independent websites. It's thriving, and there's a lot of people that are trying to figure out the truth. They're trying to dig into different possibilities and all these different things. But if you go on YouTube, if you go on the mainstream media, a lot of these videos that they're producing, CBS, ABC, and all these guys, NBC, they're getting majority downvotes. And that's because a lot of people, they're aware of what's going on. They're not taking it and just wanting to just gobble up what they're saying because it's propaganda. It's things that are emotional, it's false, and it's too extreme. For you to call somebody out and say, hey, if you oppose COVID mandates, if you oppose this, if you don't get the vaccine, if you don't do these things, then we're going to label you as a terrorist. Come on, how ridiculous does that sound? It's becoming like World War II days, right? Hitler and all these things is becoming, and it's pushing into that area of saying you can't have an opinion, you can't try to figure out and get down to the truth, right? So this is the information warfare that's going on. There's a lot of marginalizing, there's a lot of belittling, there's a lot of categorizing people that are trying to find out the truth, trying to express their freedom of speech, and all the censorship and all the stuff going on right now because of the control that people want over information. And that's why there's a huge battle going on with trying to inform people, trying not to cloud people with wrong information, but getting the truth out there. But more importantly, having you wake up and think for yourself. And that's what's going on right now. And a lot of people, they don't get it. They don't understand it. They still tune in to, these big time guys, CDC and DHS and CNN and anybody with a 3-letter acronym that they believe is credible. But that's the problem right now. Even though in this story, Adonijah was one of the sons, even though Joab had such a great reputation, even though these other guys were priests, Abiathar, the priest, even though these guys had titles, everybody thought, oh, okay, I'll just follow this, Adonijah, and I'll just go with these guys and I'll go to the banquet. I'll have a good time. And surely this is meant to be, right? This is meant to be God's will. But no, just because somebody has a title, just because somebody has a louder voice, just because they have a larger microphone, a megaphone, doesn't mean they're correct. And that's why people like Nathan the prophet, that's why people like King David and all these guys had to stand up and correct it and rightly declare what's going on. And so that's what I'm trying to tell you right now. The nation and God is from the courts of heaven. They're trying to tell you and trying to get you to realize what is really going on. And that is the fraud, that is all the things that is going on with just the elections and everything, and all of the misinformation, the propaganda, trying to control you. And it sounds crazy, it sounds like conspiracy, but the same would go back then because people lived in the moment. They would have said, oh, it would be conspiracy to think that Solomon would be king. Look, Adonijah is already king. Why would people take him down and then bring up Solomon? Again, all eyes are on the source of truth. And in this case, for King David, he was the source of truth because he was the king at the time. In this case, you could say it would be other things like the military. It could be a Durham report. It can be all these different things, the courts. It could be the audits. There's a source of truth of what really happened, and it's going to be uncovered. It's going to be brought to light, and God is going to deal with it. God is going to deal with it heavily, and his promise has already been set. The timeline may not have been right or may not have been the right thing, but think about it. It's been 8-9 months since everything has happened, and still people are not letting go, and people are even by the millions waking up more and more, realizing what's going on. And so this is not something that's just some fad. It's not some trend. It's not some hopeless kind of thing of latching on to something that's useless. There's something else going on. There's something else going on. A lot of people have prayed about it. They're waking up and they're realizing what this is. And you have to sit tight. I've said in the other video, the next few months, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be a war like you've never seen before. There's going to be, I believe, censorship like no other. There's going to be blackouts of media, many different things. And you're already getting the warning from DHS, from many people. and they're labeling it as terrorism. They're labeling it as all these different things just because you wanted to have a voice for truth, of finding out the truth, of trying to voice an opinion, your theory and your thoughts. But these things they're all being labeled as terrorism and many other things. So that's why right now we're in the thick of it. We're in the thick of this information war, and you have to be awake, you have to be alert, you have to have a prayer life, and you have to look to the source of truth. And all eyes are on the source of truth, just like verse 20 says with this circumstance. And this is what we're in right now. We're living in the moment right before big blessings. I believe a lot of things are coming, a period of grace, a lot of things are coming that is going to be good, time of prosperity, of celebration, just like with King Solomon and what was to happen. But the devil, Satan, he doesn't want these things to happen. And that's why he's fighting hard. He's doing all these things to get people to be on two different sides, to have factions, to fight, and to be confused. And if you don't have a prayer life, if you don't have a desire to seek after the truth, if you don't have a desire to have a relationship with Christ, then you're going to be eaten alive. And most people, sadly, they're still reading what they believe are credible people just because they have these three-letter things, right? CNN, ABC, DHS, CDC, whatever it is. And just because they have some authority or autonomy, and just because they have a title, people are just flocking after them. And they're reading, and I've said this before, they're just reading 2 or 3 articles, and they think they got all the information, but they don't. And that's what I'm warning you of. That's what a lot of people, they're warning you to carefully consider and to discern. And again, I'm not trying to stuff anything down someone's throat. I'm trying to get you to be alert and with urgency, try to figure out what the truth is, as opposed to trying to just be fed information from videos and from articles from the mainstream media. And so you can see it. You can see it in comments of different videos. You can see it all around, okay? A lot of activity on alternative channels and things like that. It's getting thicker, and it's getting more intense. And so that's what's happening. It's what's happening over the next couple of months. It's happening now. And unless you are right with the Lord, unless you desire for truth, then you will not get it. And instead, you will be confused. You will be angry. You will be in chaos. And for me, I'm excited. I'm happy. I know what's going on. I don't know everything that's going on, obviously, but I know the direction we're going. It's been 8 months since. And if you don't think all the audits, all of the reports and everything that's going on, if there wasn't some validity and some substance behind it, it would have died months ago. It could have been alive for a few months afterwards, but it's thick, it's strong, and it's all the more heavier and has more backing than ever because people know and realize what the truth is. And so that's what I'm trying to tell you to pray about and to wrestle with. Take it to the Lord. God bless you guys. More to come. The next few months, I'm gonna say what the Lord puts on my heart, but it may be intense. And so God bless you guys, and I'll talk to you guys very soon.
Hello again, this is The Watchman. Please join us on our new video channel called Encounters from Beyond the Veil. It's the same exciting content as our audio podcast, but in a shorter, but yet a video format. Also, please subscribe so you won't miss any of our episodes. That's Encounters from Beyond the Veil, exclusively found on YouTube. Well, thanks again for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. Also, give us a like. We welcome any comments or suggestions you might have. We also ask you to subscribe so that you will be notified of all our future episodes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Watchman on the Wall podcast.